Well, good evening. Welcome back. This is the 25th annual FisherPoets Gathering coming to you from Astoria, Oregon and the wider world. I'm Jay Speakman, your host for the last set. This will be the fourth set of the gathering. And I'm sure glad you're all here. I'm glad to be here. A few quick words of introduction. I would like to thank some people for making this possible. Some of our sponsors include the Alfred Landwehr family, Tom and Vicki Stringfellow, for their generous support, the Oregon Sea Grant, who is supporting Amanda, who's very much involved in the stage management, KMUN, and the Tillicum Foundation, the Oregon Community Foundation's Patricia Freeland Fund, who have supported us for quite a number of years, the Cannon Beach Arts Association, and through that, the Cannon Beach Tourism and Art Fund, Carol Brill and Douglas Booth. We also want to thank our stage crew, Jamie Doyle, Amanda Gladix, and others who are behind the scene. We have a pretty big lineup. We've got 18 people on our list tonight. And first up will be Alana Kansaku-Sarmiento from Portland, Oregon. What I know about Alana is she was raised in Hawaii, fished in Nushagak set netting, and seined out of Kodiak, and came to the FisherPoets Gathering in 2016. I've been to all four of those places, so I guess we have that in common. So, Alana, welcome. Thanks for joining us again.
It's so good to see your face and obviously everybody's faces. Thank you, Jay. And yeah, thank you everybody who helped make this possible. I miss you all, but I'm glad that we can be here as we are right now. The piece that I'm about to read, somebody yesterday, Annie, I believe, from Friday Harbor, had a piece with a similar topic. So I'm excited to hear what she thinks about it if she's listening now. This piece is called The Marbled Murrelet. We caught a bird in the net. It wasn't the first time. They're tiny little things out there on big water. I now believe it was a creature called the marbled murrelet. We had traveled to the southernmost district of Ugashik for our late season in Bristol Bay, and there we'd see dozens of murrelets a day, all seemingly too full to fly. They'd be grooving along on the sea around our boat, and we'd watch with a close eye as the current drifted them closer and closer to our net in the water, the cork lines bobbing in time with the birds. Our skipper spent a fair amount of time towing our nets away from these birds, who seemed so intent on getting snagged. This went on for a few days. We had traded the incessant parade of ghost fish in Nushagak, their pale, putrid bodies bottlenecking upriver and racing through tide rips, for the would-be bycatch birdies of Ugashik. We caught our first bird in spite of all our best efforts and were able to free it by reaching over the stern without even bringing the net on board. We plopped him back in the water, downwind of our net, where he continued his cork imitation without a word of thanks. The weather was up when we caught our next murrelet. This one was spending most of its time underwater, but we couldn't bring it over the roller without hurting it, nor could we reach it by hand or hook over the stern. JP jumped over the stern and onto the swim step for better access. This was the second time he had to do this today, the first time having been to rescue the cork line, an apparent cousin of the murrelet, from our jet intake. At this point, he was running out of dry underwear and socks. JP grabbed the tangle of feathers and mesh while water slapped without apology up against the stern of the boat, which was now out of gear and equally at mercy to the tide and wind as these full-bellied birds. After his fourth or fifth wave to the face, the bird was still mostly underwater, so JP finally sliced a hole in the net in order to free it. I asked him to hand it to me, and I brought the stunned bird near the entrance of the cabin and set it on my hoodie. It tried to stand, but turned out it had no sea legs. I figured she should have a chance to rest, I said. She's just a little shocked, but she'll recover, said JP. We finished bringing the net on board. I went back to check on her. JP walked up behind me. "Let's put her back in the water," he said. I picked her up, hesitatingly, and asked if he didn't think it was too soon. "They're used to being in the water. That's why she looks so awkward on deck. She'll be fine." I looked from JP down to the little bird in my stiff orange gloves, and over to the green water streaming past our starboard as Eric throttled on to the next set. I looked back up to JP, and again back down to the bird. My face screwed up and began to feel unseasonably warm. But what if she won't be fine? I felt like a toddler, my tears sudden and hot as I tried to will them away. As a personal rule, I try to save all my crying for the head, not the deck. "She'll be fine," he said. I leaned my hip against the rail and looked over one more time. With a quiet sob, I tossed the tiny body as gently as I could into what appeared to be a churning, frothing mass. For a second, it dunked beneath the surface, and I lost sight of it. As we sped away, it popped back up like the cork it so resembles and shook its little brown wings out. JP was right, I thought. It looks much less awkward in the water than on deck. I felt a pat on the shoulder. JP walked away. After all the killing we do every season, the second nature motions of bleeding and tossing fish, the putting out of so many majestic lights, some might think it would be easier to grapple with the constant shadow of death. A shadow that seems to move just enough to stay out of full view every time you turn around. A shadow that moves with you. A shadow sometimes as tiny as that of a cork, or of a murrelet, for that matter, on an overcast day. A shadow sometimes as large as one cast by a cliff in the sun. While pulling the net in on our next set, we found one last bird. He was dead. I wordlessly removed it from the net and threw it back in the water, and wondered why I didn't cry. Thank you.
Thanks, Alana. I've had birds come aboard my boat when I was lobstering offshore, and I always had a place in my heart for them. It's a tough place out there for a bird that gets when things go wrong. Yeah, I like your chair. Mine doesn't move like that, but it has a great sort of feel to it. Anyway, Dan Keyser is up next. What can I say about Dan? Most of the hair on Dan's head is now on his chin. He's grown a mean beard. Welcome, Dan. I understand that you are from Chinook, Washington, just across the river. Love to have you back. Love to hear from you.
Oh, well, thank you, thank you. Well, welcome aboard, all of my Fisher Poet friends. You've caught me standing right here on the back deck of life, looking back upon my commercial fishing career. I was born in Astoria, Oregon, born and raised, 60% Yugoslavian, 40% Tennessee hillbilly, and 100% Astoria fighting fisherman. I earned my very first commercial fishing dollar in the late 80s on the mighty Columbia with my uncle Jack Marinkovich aboard the Andy J. But I truly cut my teeth in this commercial fishing industry when I left for the Bering Sea on a little crab boat called the Maverick. Now, this was the early 90s. And I tell you, the opilio fishery of the early 90s was every bit the heyday of the king crab fishery in the late 70s in the Bering Sea. In 1991, the opilio quota was 300 million pounds. Young men such as myself were racing to Alaska with the dreams of getting rich. Yeah, that's one small catch. There's a good chance you may just die trying. Now, as a young man headed north to Alaska, I felt invincible at times. I felt stronger than anything I could imagine. And the pride and just the ambition that I found was something even overwhelming for myself. Now, as a young man stepping onto the deck of a Bering Sea crab boat, I found myself lost in the hard work that was laid before me. Now, many of the men that found their way to the Bering Sea found themselves unable to deal with the cold, soul-crushing exhaustion that was about to come upon their lives. If you can imagine a quota of 300 million pounds, you've got 250 boats vying for this quota. It would take us 5 full months to catch this crab, day after day, month after month, hauling gear in the freezing spray and the vicious storms. There was approximately 1,400 men that would make their way to Alaska into this fishery. And unfortunately, not all of us would make our way home. Now, the first piece, or the only piece I'm going to actually read, Bering Sea Strong, I initially wrote as sort of a symbolic piece to these men that have battled these conditions season after season, year after year. But I tell you, as life goes on, I have found that this strength is possessed by all of us. We all will find ourselves sailing into these unavoidable storms of life. We will find ourselves needing to find the inspiration within ourselves to fight, to stand once again and move forward. So this piece right here, which I really consider maybe not my best written, but it certainly is my signature piece, Bering Sea Strong. There is a beast that roams out west. He is tougher and stronger than all the rest. As the ice appears and the nights wear on, the winds they play a vicious song. It is so much more than just a physical test. It's a drive to live and be your best. Yet for all the men that ride these waves, there is one fact we all look at. Some of these men are not coming back. Every year we ring the bell. We close our eyes as they begin to swell. The children look and wonder why. Why, my father? Why, oh why? We never got to throw the ball, the hugs, the kisses. We'll miss them all. I have had my tears. I've known the pain of losing friends. I have had my tears freeze for them. But there is one thing that we must do. Haul that next pot and push on through. It's not always the sea that takes these men. Some are just lost deep within. They cannot find peace upon dry land, and the other fisheries do not test their hand. So for all those men, both here and gone, fair winds, smooth seas, forever on. We'll see everybody in Astoria next year. And always remember to never forget, we're all Bering Sea Strong. Thank you.
Thank you, Danny. Good to see you. Great story. And yeah, those were the Wild West days. I liked your background. There's quite a bit going on there. Lots of mementos. I recognize my poster and my wife's both there on the wall. Very honored to have that. Next we have Lara Messersmith-Glavin from Portland, Oregon. Lara grew up in the salmon seining on Kodiak, and she says that she retired at 21, which is quite amazing in itself. And now writes and teaches and is a member of the Guttery Writers, which sounds pretty intriguing. Welcome. Thanks for coming.
Oh, that's an old bio. I'm not in that group any longer, but it's really great to be here. Thanks, Jay. So nice to see and hear everyone. Danny, you're a tough act to follow. I've got a book coming out this spring. It's called Spirit Things. And I'm going to read a short excerpt from the chapter about shells. When the land and the ocean meet, they speak with many voices and arrive in many moods. Standing on the shore, I imagine the babble and pigeons of crossroads, water travelers coming to trade with the people of stone and the couriers of wind. No two beaches sound exactly the same. Some waves gnaw at the sand, crunching it ever finer, swallowing it back with the tide. Others hurl their shoulders against the pits and crags of rocks, gathering and exploding in rhythmic smash. Some creep up the stony edge with myriad wet fingers, then hiss and retreat, tumbling small stones as they slide. Underfoot, some beaches tick and chime as their stones roll and strike. Others clatter like handfuls of coins. Still others whisper as their sand is tossed in the wind, or squelch as they cave and flood with every footstep. Walking on beaches is never about a destination. I'm rarely trying to get from one specific point to another or with any great speed. It's about being there on the edge of the infinite, staring out into the closest thing to a straight line that nature has to offer, the water horizon. And it's about seeing what is there beneath my feet. Beachcombing is like finding magic eye patterns. From the noise of complex visual static, a new image emerges suddenly, visible and plain where nothing was moments before. My eyes travel across the surface of the beach underfoot, gliding past millions upon millions of tiny stones, crystals, grains of sand, shells, bits of seaweed, and crabs with every step. How does the eye find what it's looking for? Is it novelty that draws attention to itself, an unusual color or shape? Or maybe it is that some shells are simply more perfect than others, their very shellness describing an ideal form. And so it is in their similarity to all other shells, to the idea of a shell or a stone or a feather, whatever type of prize it is I have found, that it becomes special, a thing to be treasured. The act of beachcombing requires patience and a slow pace, a submission to the powers of serendipity and attention. I let my eyes relax and find things through intuition and some other less accessible process of beholding. Like water divining, I follow the ground and trust the idea that there are shapes and colors that simply want to be found. I wait to hear the shell's voice or the pebbles. Some seem to want to stay right where they are. Others long to travel, to be flung back into the water or to be pocketed for some adventure. Sometimes I pick one up only to find that it wants to be set back down before I leave the beach, as if it only wanted to keep me company for a while, or it needed a lift a few hundred yards down. Either way, knowing what feels right to take and to leave involves a great deal of listening. One of the reasons beachcombing feels so reflective is because it involves moving with intention through a liminal zone. The beach is not a hard boundary. The ocean is not a wall. The intertidal line between shore and sea shifts constantly and sometimes violently. What was once underwater can later be many yards away from the edge of the waves, and what was shore, dry land, can quickly be submerged, rendered deadly or unreachable. The shifting of zones makes it wild and, if not exactly unpredictable, then unknowable in the way of a person whose moods swing with precipitous angles. Is this place for me or not for me? What manner of place is it, after all? In this liminal zone, creatures and objects from one world can be stranded in the other. Trash from the dry world gets tossed into the ocean and then spit back out onto the beaches. Land things spend time at sea and are returned, rendered strange and round and new. Driftwood bleaches pale and grows soft on the edges. Bottles shatter and tumble and are returned as curved jewels that only shine when wet. Bones crack and grow wood-like. Feathers become stiff and flightless, sticky, sharp arrows, and tiny sandcastle flags. Water things get left behind when the tide recedes, crab carapaces like brittle pink stones, kelp forming long rubbery snakes in the sand, jellyfish hardened to blobs of jam, bubbles and foam, the sea aggravated to froth on the beach. It is these marooned objects that we gather and assemble into collections and mobiles that we dangle from strings or fill our pockets, attempting to carry some of the feeling of the liminal zone, the unknowability, back home with us. Thank you so much. I hope to see you next year.
Thanks so much, Lara. That was very nice. Really appreciated that. Next up, we've got a couple of guys call themselves Shanghaied on the Willamette.
Arr, yeah.
Arr. And well, Jonathan Lay and Gordy Euler have been coming to the FisherPoets Gathering for many years. Gordy plays a range of instruments, including a mandola.
Mandola.
He's got in his hands. John plays guitar, and they both sing. Gentlemen, welcome.
Hey, thanks, Jay. Yeah, thank you. Happy to be here for FisherPoets Gathering. We're going to do you a song about a couple of oystermen out of New York, let's see, Brooklyn, New York. And this was back in the turn of the century, 1896 or so. They're working hard, dredging oysters, and they found a way to make money a little quicker.
All right, are you ready?
I'm ready.
1, 2.
Brooklyn, New York, at the turn of the century, lived two young Norwegians, so brave and so bold. Frank Samuelson, only halfway through his 20s, George Harbo had just become 30 years old. Now Harbo had spent all his life on the water, he'd shipped in square riggers when only a lad. His partner likewise was no stranger to working, no matter the task he gave all that he had. That year a rich publisher offered a challenge that men in a vessel, no matter the size, couldn't cross the Atlantic without steam or canvas, and $10,000 he named as a prize. Now dredging up oysters by hand is no picnic, and these two Norwegians were dumb as hell. With Frank if we rode only 4 miles an hour, in 54 days we can finish the trip. We'll see you in France, or we'll see you in heaven. Right, Harbo and Samuelson out on the bay, two hearty young oystermen after adventure, and no one believed they could row away. Obtaining a sponsor, they started their training. They ordered a dory of cedar and oak, just 18 feet long with a draft of 8 inches. And Fox was the name of their cockle shell boat. On the 6th day of June 1890, and 6 Messrs. Harbo and Samuelson started to row. They took their water till last them till August, and the newspaper said they were good as to go. We'll see you in France, so we'll see you in heaven. Cried Harbo and Samuelson out on the bay. They were hearty young oystermen after adventure, and no one believed they could row away. From the slips of Manhattan they rode through the Narrows, then onto the Gulf Stream and over the deep. Each day they would row 18 hours together. At night they took turns getting 3 hours sleep. Their stove wouldn't light, so they ate cold provisions. Their arms and their hands became swollen and brown. The odd passing vessel that took them on board was their only relief from the toil and the damp. Then out on the grand banks, the weather rods got them the wind up the water, hit the mountainous waves. They lashed down their oars and they tied on their lifelines and prayed they were not going straight to their graves. We'll see you in France and we'll see you in heaven, cried Harbo and Samuelson out on the bay. Too hard to get oystermen and their adventure, and no one needs to be bigger along the way. Then out of the dark came a monstrous wave, capsizing the fox and her terrified. Their lifelines held fast, but they lost half their water. For most of their food it was swept away too. They carefully rationed the little remaining, praying for help as they rode on the brine. Then out in the distance they spied a tall ship with the colors of Norway afloated behind. And the captain could not be convinced they were crazy, but he gave them supplies and they went on their way. By the lines on the charts they were halfway to Europe, but now they must row 60 miles every day. We'll see you in France, and we'll see you in heaven, right Harbo and Samuelson out on the bay. Too hard to get most of an after adventure, and no one needs to be bigger along the way. The weather held fair and the two men kept pulling up the reach long day and far into each night. Then early one morning before the sun arose, far out on the horizon they spotted a light. On August the 1st they made land off St. Mary's off the south coast of England, close by Bishop's Rock. In amazement the townsfolk gathered down by the water, from Harbo and Samuelson barely could walk. Most men would have stopped there to bask in their glory after having been sunbeaten, capsized and starved. But they were both back in their boat the next morning, and in less than a week they arrived at Lahaina. We'll see you in France, and we'll see you in heaven, right Harbo and Samuelson out on the bay. Too hard to get oystermen and their adventure, and no one needs to be good away. So those of you listening who yearn for adventure like Harbo and Samuelson so long ago, like them, be prepared for the task you are facing. They were not only brave, but by God they will go. We'll see you in France, so we'll see you in heaven, right Harbo and Samuelson out on the bay. Too hard to get most of it after adventure, and no one needs to figure away. We'll see you in France, so we'll see you in heaven, right Harbo and Samuelson out on the bay. Too hard to get waste of an after adventure, and no one needs to be bigger away. Hey, made it! I made it once again. Woo-hoo.
And you guys made it. Good work.
All right. Thanks,
yeah.
Jay.
I'm glad you guys did that. We made special arrangements that they could go a little bit over time, and because they wanted to do that song. That was a John Campbell song, and if some of you missed it, it was a great set that we had for John Campbell's final. We called it John Campbell's last set this afternoon. Was quite moving. All right, well, moving along. Actually, before we go to Robert Ray, who's up next, I would like to correct the credit that I gave earlier is for Tom and Vicky Stringfield. I said the name Stringfellow, and it's actually Stringfield, so my apologies for that. Next up is Robert Ray. Robert survived the sinking of the tug Eagle in a massive storm in the Gulf of Alaska in, I believe it was 1983. I was also in that storm myself. It's quite a well-known event. Other people perished in that storm. So he'll tell you about it, I'm sure. He's got a new book. Welcome, Robert.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, by the way. This is, I don't know, you can't probably see it. My new book is called Darkness in the Light of Day. I was chief engineer on the Tug Eagle back in 1983, and our normal run was from Seattle to Anchorage, Alaska, and we would haul 2 barges, each with about 7,000 tons of cargo. And we'd get to Anchorage, and then we would unload, and then after we unloaded, then we would reload the barges with retrograde and machinery and containers coming back to Seattle. In October of 1983, we were returning to Seattle southbound. We got to the mouth of the Cook Inlet, and they had reported storm warnings. So the captain diverted the tug and the 2 barges, and we went into Prince William Sound. We started just doing circles like we normally would and try to wait out the storm. About a half a day later, we got a clearance to go, and they said we would be having another storm coming upon us, but it shouldn't be there for another couple of days, and it would give us enough time to be able to get inside. So we whipped the horses, went outside, but we could only do a couple of knots just because the weather was still kind of lying down. Made the corner, started heading southbound, and as it calmed down, we increased the speed, and we're actually doing pretty good. And then on the morning of the 27th of October, my regular watch was 6 in the morning until noon, and then noon until midnight. So on the 27th, I worked that day, but it was so rough and getting rougher that the cook wasn't making anything for any of us to eat. The crew was pretty quiet. About all I could do was check the engines for fuel, transfer fuel, oil, those kind of things. I got off watch at noon, went up to my stateroom, looked out my porthole there, and it was dark. I couldn't believe how dark it was. It seemed like it was almost evening time, and it was 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It continued to get rougher. I laid down to take a nap and kind of wedged myself in my bunk. And I woke up at about 2 o'clock to my cabinets flying open, everything in my cabinets going up against my door. I leaped out of bed, went to the door to open it, and I couldn't because everything was piled up. I threw everything out of the way, grabbed my survival suit, which was right above my bunk, opened the door, fell on the captain's door. The captain and any of us normally have our doors open when we're on watch, but for whatever reason, his door was closed. Otherwise, I would have fell all the way through. I walked in the bulkhead. We're at about a 40-degree list. Then I walked up the stairs, or kind of on the stairs and part of the bulkhead, on my hands and knees across the pilot house, put my survival suit on, and I hollered at the captain, "What the hell's going on?" He said, "We're going down." And just by hearing that, I was in shock, like, what the hell is going on here? Where is everybody? The captain was outside the port side door, along with the second mate and one AB. When I got outside the door, I asked the AB if I had my suit all the way zipped up, and his face was white as a ghost. All of them knew you can't jump in this water in 50-foot seas, 70-mile-an-hour winds, 65 miles offshore, and survive without a suit on. When just before she started to sink, I looked out, and the only thing I could see was the starboard side, the port side stack. Everything else was underwater. You couldn't see any of the back deck. They jumped off the bow in the water. I jumped to the raft. I had a hold of the raft. If they would have followed me, they could have got in the raft, but they didn't. The raft was still attached to the vessel. The tether was still attached to the vessel. And I started freaking out a little bit, thinking that if the boat sinks, that vortex is going to pull me down along with it. So I let go of the tether, and then found a piece of 1-inch poly, and I put it around my neck, and it dragged behind me. So I heard the captain give a mayday, but I didn't hear anyone actually returning the call. So I didn't know how long I was going to have to last in the water. And then, of course, my family, I was married. I also had 2 kids. They were 3 and 4. And I started praying, help me, Lord, I need your help. I can't do this on my own. And I started going up the mountains of water. I'd get to the top, it would bust over me. I'd go down the other side, pop back up again. And when I got underwater, I had a beard at the time, the water would go inside my suit. And I did that for about 4 hours until the U.S. Coast Guard finally showed up. I'm out of time, but I would like you all to get my book. It's called Darkness in the Light of Day. I think you'll enjoy it. It's a true story, and I wrote it, and it was published in April of 2021. And I thank you again, Jay, for having me on.
Thanks, Robert. I didn't mention that Robert is coming to us from Hawaii. His background, of course, looks like he's on the space shuttle, but he's living in Wailuku on Maui, so we've got people coming to us from all over. But that's quite a harrowing story. So next up, we have Naphtali Forbes Fields from Kodiak, Alaska. I don't see her up on the screen, and so
Actually, I think we have Alec McMurren.
Yeah, we're going to Alec.
sorry, missed Alec. There you go, Alec. Don't feel bad. Here you go. Thanks for joining us from the Red Room.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you, Robert. I'm Alec McMurren, and we're here at Petersburg, Alaska, and we're going to change course a little bit, and going to head into a storm of fish here. Nicole, my wife, and I have put kind of a West Coast spin on an old Pete Seeger song. Let's sing it. Called Bold Fisherman. I'm all ye bold fishermen.
Listen to me.
We'll tell you a tale of a fish of the sea. Blow here in westerly blow, bound for the fishing ground, steady she go. Up jumped the herring, they're flipping about.
Come try to catch us.
They sing and they shout, dive in a ball and are gone with the tide.
They said we'd be back.
But I think that they lied. Then come the salmon, he struts up on deck. He says,
You can't go fishing, you got holes in your net. Get them sewn up or you'll never catch me.
He's gone with a twist, and he's back in the sea. Blow you in westerly blow, bound for the fishing ground, steady she goes. Then come the halibut, flop on the hatch, he lives his muscles, dangerous catch, he says.
I'm a monster as big as a whale.
He's gone overboard with a thrash of his tail. Deep down the codfish,
They're black and they're gray.
deep down the codfish, the black and the gray, he shakes off the line and goes swimming away. Turns with a grin and he spits out the hook.
I think that the fisherman might be good to cook.
Blow you in westerly blow,
Bound
for the fishing ground,
steady she goes.
Down on the bottom, the crab marches come up. They call him up, pots, and they eat the bait up. They say,
we're still hungry. What shall we do? Hey, won't you fall in and we'll eat you up too?
then come the fisherman all stalwart and grim, and with his big net he scoops all the fish in.
Blow you in westerly blow, bound for the fishing ground, steady she goes.
Blow you in westerly blow.
Well, thank you. That's great. Hey, so are we all done there? Yeah? Okay. Thank you so much. A little bit of theatrical entertainment there. So now we do have Naphtali showing up for us. Hi, Naphtali. I've yet to meet you myself. Welcome. I'm glad you've decided to join us tonight. The little I know about you, I think you're from Kodiak and grew up fishing. So that's about all I have to say. You can introduce yourself, if you will. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay. Hi, everyone. My name is Naphtali Fields-Forbes, and this is my first FisherPoets Gathering. Jay's right. I'm from Kodiak. I'm a third-generation set netter. And this is an excerpt from a play that I wrote. I'm a director and a playwright called Set Net, an Alaskan Fishing Story. And I was loving the performance that just came on. Thanks, Alex and Nicole. That was awesome. Here's a little bit of an introduction to this island that 8 crew are trapped on for the duration of a salmon season, and they experience some of the joys and a lot of the trials of set net season throughout the long Kodiak summer. This is the origin story of the island. Once there was a giant, a huge stumbling giant riding green mountains up the Pacific headed for the Arctic. Had to get there before the ice came, join with his kin in the north, everything pushing against his journey. Snow whirling, wind whipping, waves pulling at his feet and his mountain horses. In anger, he pulls off his boot and throws it against the storm, leaving the boot behind. And it becomes an island, no more than a mile around. Beautiful. But when you throw a stone at the sky in anger, the sky remembers. And every family that's ever lived on the island has known troubles. Last summer, a fire, a mother gone and Render standing in the ashes, Talia wearing her mother's dress, trying to call Sarah home. But Render, you just watch. He's like that first giant. He'll keep on pushing, keep on fishing, won't even glance at the ashes on his own boots. There's more to the story. When the giant threw the boot, he hit Tiame, the woman in the wind. She fell from the sky, found the boot island, wove it out of the water with kelp hair and driftwood with songs, made a story, waiting for the winds to come and pull her back, but no one came. She wove a boat. It broke in the water. And salmon, a school of thousands of salmon, swam under her drowning body and lifted her, carried her north. The island was left behind, full of his anger, full of her tears. It wanted to follow, but was stuck fast in the ocean's mud. A lonely island never left the place it was forgotten. This is a song that the young female protagonist sings about her relationship to that island. I was born here on the island in the midst of a salmon run. My first breath was of seaweed, spruce trees, and the setting sun. My mother said the island would always treat me as her own. But my island didn't protect me from her leaving me alone. I've seen earthquakes and tsunamis here alone all through the year. I fish salmon with my father since I first could wear the gear. They always told me the island has a grip like the winter's wind. They told me no one could escape here, but last summer my mother did. Thank you. If you want to see more songs or excerpts from the play, go to the videos and extras page. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was great to see you. Thanks for coming and giving us that story and such a nice song. It's very refreshing to hear somebody singing a cappella style without any accompaniment. I know that takes a little bit of courage, and it's great to see you here. First timer, Naphtali Forbes Fields from Kodiak, Alaska. Next up, we have Melanie Brown. I'm glad you made it, Melanie. Good to see you. Melanie has grown up also fishing with her parents and putting up fish and preparing fish for the winter, and has great stories about all of that. And welcome to the FisherPoets Gathering.
Thank you, Jay. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. I'm going to share a song today. It's called Even When You're Far Away, and it was inspired by my great-grandparents. They've been gone for a really long time, but I feel like I'm still learning from them. And yeah, I learned to fish next to my great-grandpa Paul Chacon, and then whenever we'd come back from the beach, my great-grandma Anna Chacon she'd always have really good food waiting for us. And then this song also speaks to when we have to leave the ones that we love to go fishing. And yeah, I feel like my great-grandparents, they taught me a lot about love, and I'm just still coming into the consciousness of that. But thank you for listening. I learned to handle salmon by your side. You saw me and I could feel your pride. So long ago you're being left this world, but your fire lives on in those you touched with your good. Even though you're gone away, your love is with us still. Your hands cared for us with the food you made. I can still smell and taste your smoked fish in my mind. Your kindness continues when I create and share. Sometimes it feels as if you are still here. Even though you're gone away, your love is with us still. Time and death did not take you away, because you came into our hearts to stay. Even though you're gone away, your love is with us still. I tried many times to be close to another heart. Then you came into my life and something felt altered. When I'm in nature, I see you in everything. Don't you know that you make my heart sing? Even when you're far away, your love is with me still. Time and distance cannot take you away, because you came into my heart to stay. Even when you're far away, your love is with me still. Even when you're far away, your love is with me still. Even when you're far away. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
you.
I just wanted to say that normally I would be playing that with my music partner, who plays a really nice fat acoustic bass guitar. And yeah, it would have been nice to have his bass in there too. We call ourselves Sunny Porch, if you ever want to check our music out. But thanks for listening. It's so nice to be here.
Well, Melanie, it's nice to have you. We sure appreciate your music. It's great to hear your storytelling through your words and your music. So next up, we have a fellow named Rich Bard who used to fish, but now he's got his 4th book just coming out, which he'll probably try to tell you about if his poem doesn't take too much time. Welcome, Rich. Thanks for coming back.
Thank you, Jay. This poem's so new, it doesn't have a title. It was the 30th of June, was the day before the season opened. Crabs were scuffling in my head. It was a time of hope and fear. Pressure was on big time to put myself on the hot spot. If I started out on the fish, I'd have the biggest day of the year. I set a course for the fair weather grounds where I always had good luck. Ran through the night and drifted, got the gear in at first light. I made a few tacks and a whole lot more. I searched all over the bank. 8 hours later, going on noon, I hadn't had a single bite. I wish I was an actuary. Wish I was an insurance salesman. Good steady pay with benefits, go home when it's 5 o'clock. I wish I was an actuary. Wish I didn't have to fish. 'Cause when you got the skunk on board, it's like pounding your head on a rock. I left the West Bank, ran across to the east, put the gear in and started over. Caught a lot of nothing. Then at Fleet Corner was some boats going up and down. I tacked back and forth and all around, but never even got a wiggle. There were other boats here. Well, that was true, but there weren't any salmon around. I wish I was an actuary. Wish I was a social studies teacher. Sunny classroom, respectful kids, all of them eager to learn. I wish I was an actuary. Wish I didn't have to troll. 'Cause when you can't find the fish, it's a slow burn. I trolled on down to the bank's lower end. I searched all over the place. Went across all the likely spots. I still had nothing to show. After a while, it began to get dark. Time to make a decision. I had to leave this desert, but where was I supposed to go? I wish I was an actuary. Wish I was a software engineer. Work in a place that had its own gym, get my muscles toned. If I was an actuary, wouldn't have to care about no salmon. I'd just put in my 10-hour day, then go to the club and get stoned. I ran through the night to the inner bank. I drifted till the daylight came. Started again on the ideal spot on the finger's eastern end. I trolled right up the middle, where I'd always found kings before. 4 hours brought not one stupid fish. I was going around the bend. I wish I was an actuary. Wish I was an influencer on Twitter. Hot pop singers and soccer players would beg to be on my blog. Wish I was an actuary. Wish I could just get a life. not be blundering around like some old homeless dog. I kept on trolling out to the west. I got to the triple 40s, where a fish climbed on, then a whole lot more. It became a giant haul. A day and a half, and we filled the boat. Had to go in to sell. I began to think that trolling maybe wasn't so bad after all. I'm glad I'm not an actuary. Glad I'm not imprisoned in some cubicle, even if the chance is next to zero that I'd ever drown. Glad I'm not an actuary. Glad I'm out here on the ocean. It might be chill, but there ain't much thrill in working on solid ground. So that's the poem with no name. And there's a book that does have a name, Sayu Blue, spelled T-S-I-U like the river. You could probably search for it if you wanted. But one more thing. It's still February. It's still dark and cold and wet. But if you squint at the horizon, you can almost see the next season coming along here. And when it does, and when it's opening day, I hope you put yourself on a huge pile of fish. And you can take that metaphorically if you want. Good luck. Bye.
Thanks, Rich. I appreciate a little harmonica and fast rap from fellow fishermen. That's great. I haven't heard you do that before. So yeah, something new. And I guess your book is out there. I'm sure that you it's easy enough to find. I'm pretty sure it's on Amazon. Next up is John Palms. John comes from Juneau. He lives on his boat in the boat harbor there. He's been at many a gathering in the past. Love to see him back. He's written a lot of memorable songs, including one of my favorites, Addicted to Pink. You know, while we're here, before John comes on, why don't I give you a little roundup? We're about halfway through the set here, so I would like to say a few things. We've been moving along pretty quickly here. As mentioned before, we did lose our beloved sound man, Mick Hassan, last summer. And then more recently, we just lost one of our favorite performers, John Campbell from Rhode Island. I'd like to remember both of them fondly. I'd also like to thank our sponsors, the Alfred Landwehr family, Tom and Vicky Stringfield, as I said, for their long-term generous support, the Oregon Sea Grant, KMUN, Tillicum Foundation, the Oregon Community Foundations, Patricia Freeland Fund, who have also been a longtime supporter of the gathering, the Cannon Beach Arts Association, and through it, the Cannon Beach Tourism and Art Fund, Carol Brill and Douglas Booth. All thank you, all of you, for your generosity and continued support. So next up, we have John Palms coming to us. I'm glad you were able to join us, John.
I thank you. So I think, first of all, I have to say thanks, everybody. This is just, you know, how could I find an audience or a place to do this? And it's so amazing being part of the whole thing. And I just wish that I'd spent more time with John Campbell. Okay, so we're going to do a couple of love songs. And this one, I used to hand troll around Elfin Cove, and there's a place called The Laundry, and it was mentioned in readings last night, which was also really cool. I mean, people know about these little places that I've been fishing. Okay, so The Laundry is a place where we used to catch cohos. And a long, long time ago, the seiners used to even seine in there. It's really narrow, and there's rocks in there. Anyway, so this is called Retro Love. During the course of the season, the price changes, and you might get a cost adjustment. You might get it during the season. You might get it the following year. Our season of romance is all over now. There's a closure at Love's, spying scow. The thrill has gone upstream. Push has come to shove. Now what I need is some of your retro love, your retro love. I fish loves laundry, hand crank 20 spreads, dawn until dusk with 30-pound leads. I brought you everything, cleaned in a tub, and now what I need is some of that retro love, you know, retro love. Well, retro love is in the Bible, and it's a true fact that if you fish for the Lord, well, the Lord pays you back. When God gave Noah the rainbow sign and sent down his dove, it was an outward manifestation of his retro love. Now when retro is coming, you just have to guess. And how much do I report to Love's IRS? In with the ebb, out with the flood, the circadian rhythm of retro love. Now, no matter how clever or handsome you are, if you fish around Gaff Rock, you will find that for. Tie up another 20 spreads, give the wheel of fate a shove, put down your hoochies for retro love. Okay, well, you know, it's different doing this when you don't have an audience, because I would be getting audience reaction. You would be laughing. You would be clapping. Okay, well, anyway, here's another one. Not too loose, not too tight. My vinyl of mediums fit just right. Take the cuts and the nicks from my fish cleaning knife. My bright orange vinyl of gloves. Made in Malaysia, where the vinyl grows tall, orange and blue. Molded over a soft cotton core to the shape of a relaxed hand. Orange or blue, which one for you? Before you go out on deck, before you pull the gear, before you touch a fish, before anything gets tough, put on your vinyl love gloves, your bright orange vinyl love gloves. Now, when I die and they lay me to rest, there in my coffin, in my suit and my vest, I might go to heaven, but not right away. Probably in purgatory, at least a few days. Who knows what might come up? Please slip on a pair of gloves, bright orange vinyl love gloves. Now, my rain gear, PVC over nylon, no matter what kind, no matter what brand. Helly Hansen, Uniroyals, Korea, Japan. But look what they've done to our extra toughs. Now don't you mess with my vinyl loves. My bright orange, molded to the shape of a relaxed hand. Vinyl love gloves. Thank you, everybody, very much. And call that number on your screen and make sure you're getting all the benefits you deserve.
All right, you did it. Thank you, John. Come all the way from Juneau, Alaska.
Yeah, we're on a boat about 150 yards off the coast of North America right now.
All right. Well, I hope you have a good bilge pump.
I don't need one. It doesn't leak.
All right. Good man. Good man. Well, good to see you again. So thank you for that. Well, next up we have Tele Aadsen from Bow, Washington. Tele is a self-described tree-hugging, tofu-eating, yoga-posing commercial fisherman writer. Took that right off the website. Welcome, Tele.
Thanks, Jay, and Amanda, and Jamie. Hey, friends. I'm going to keep this intro short. I've been salmon trolling out of Sitka since 1984 as a boat kid, and this piece is from last August. It's called Same Boats. On the Nurka, Joel and I troll for kings off Baranoff. On the Charity, Martin's had 1 foot out the fishery since we were kids. The Charity was meant to be his dad's retirement trawler. Lloyd had a stroke. The boat fell into Martin's hands. 23 years later, with a partner and a child on land, he thinks about the time he has left with them, the time he doesn't have. He says this August afternoon is his last. 10 miles east, on the Pacific Ranger, Jeff and son John fish dogs in West Crawfish. They see the Lady Cypress enter the inlet as if to join the fleet, then drift oddly sideways instead. On the Lady Cypress, the captain is having a stroke. The deckhand calls the Coast Guard. There's no reply. On the Pacific Ranger, Jeff glances at the cliffs framing the fjord, sea level straight to 4,000 feet. Crawfish is an isolation tank. Nothing in, nothing out. Jeff responds to the call. On the Sunset, Zane is a trained nurse. The inlet is as deep as the cliffs are tall. Drag 50 fathoms, your poles scrape the trees. Nowhere to drop anchor. Zane stacks his gear, puts his boat in neutral to drift. On the Beaufort Sea, the crew launches a Zodiac. They zip over to the Sunset and rush Zane to the Lady Cypress. 4 miles west, on the Minkie, Bert is able to hear the Lady Cypress. He relays to the Coast Guard. On the Jubilee, Zane's friend gets a line on the Sunset to keep the nurse's boat off the rocks. On the Lady Cypress, Zane reports to Bert that the patient is a 70-year-old male, right side deficit. He cannot talk. It's now been an hour since the deckhand called for help. On the Minkie, Bert knows Crawfish is a 5-minute flight from Sitka. He snaps into the mic. We got an ETA on that chopper yet? The Beaufort Sea rafts to the Lady Cypress, anticipating the tender's open deck will be easier to pick from. They don't anticipate the force of rotor wash as the Jayhawk hovers above. The crew scrambles to strap down tote lids, readies for a second try. On the Beaufort Sea, the rescue swimmer secures the captain in the basket, sends him up. On the Lady Cypress, the deckhand starts the 3-hour run to Sitka. On the Sunset, Zane puts his boat in gear. On the Pacific Ranger, John and Jeff run their lines. On the Minkie, Bert hangs up the radio. On the Charity, Martin stacks his gear for the last time. He calls to share the moment without really having words to do so. Looking back, he recalls, wasn't that long ago we pushed ourselves so hard just to prove we could, to survive, to stay afloat. On the Nurka, I think about what it takes to survive. An early pandemic rallying cry chirped, we're all in the same boat. Anyone with actual sea time heard that phrase as the lie it was. Naive, dangerous, empathy and aid contingent on our perceived sameness. From these vessels crowded with our dreads and our dreams, we are keenly aware of what it took to get through this day, what it takes to get through all these days. So many people on so many different boats. I want to thank my fleet mates, John and Jeff and Bert and Martin, for talking to me about this piece, and I want to thank you all for being here, wherever you are, on whatever different boats. We love you. See you next year.
Thanks, Tele. And that was a well-written piece, well read. Surely appreciate having you. And I'm not going to take a lot of time to introduce Joel, who is coming to you from the same location. Yeah, we've seen Joel here for quite a few years now, and it's great to see you maturing into a musician and writer and performer that you are. Take it away, man.
Thanks, Jay. Gonna sing a song for you guys today, and this is a love song inspired by the two most powerful women in my life, my wife Tele and the ocean. It's called You Are Home. Waves roll out as far as I can see. Across an ocean, the iris of your eye, and your current carries me home. I take refuge in the beat of your heart, and the world can wait. They won't find us here, 'cause we have found love in the calm between the storms that rage inside of us, in the shelter of your arms. I am secure, and this will always be. Raindrops fall, return to the sea. A raven calls, a waterfall with wings. There is only this, there is only right now. Surrender to the sound of what the words can't say, and the world can't wait. They won't find us here, 'cause we have found love in the storm between the storms that rage inside of us, in the shelter of your arms. I am secure, and this will always be. Thanks for everybody putting this on, and hope to all see you all in Astoria next year.
Thank you, Joel. That was great. Great to see you back. Loved your music. And look forward to having you in person next year. We're all hoping that we can get it back together and walk into any of a number of favorite venues face to face. So let's hold that good thought. Now, the next guy on the list happens to be myself. And I wrote something just for this occasion. And so I'm going to give it a try. It's called Red Sky Morning. And a little background on this piece. When I was in my early 20s, I dropped out of college, went back to Maine, lived on a little island with about 100 people. Lived on venison and sea ducks during the fall and winter, and got a job as deckhand. I worked on a number of boats off that island. There were about 70 or 80 people living on the island. It's about 700 acres, about 3 or 4 miles off close to Maine, and 14 lobster boats in the harbor, every one of them supporting a family. Very traditional, all wooden boats, wooden gear. And when the winter winds came howling, everybody came ashore. It was a day fishery, and the boats were 35, 36 feet, maybe 100, 150 horsepower. Not really kind of boats you'd want to be offshore 10 miles off in the winter when it's below freezing, maybe 8, 10 below zero at times. So this is called Red Sky Morning, and it's about a little story about how it was. In fact, some of the guys on that island were old enough, I was young enough, that one of my cohorts, Charlie Gray, we called him Zane Gray, was had fished on the Grand Banks out of a dory. So those times are gone, but this is how it was. When that old north wind comes howling, ice along the shore, boats are riding their moorings, poverty at my door. Red sky in the morning, white caps on the bay. Not a soul is going fishing, I won't see $1 today. And that wind just keeps on blowing, hoping for a better day. As if I can't go out fishing, man, how am I ever gonna make it pay? Well, I think I'll go down to the lobster dock, see what's going on. Ain't felt cold like this since I left Saskatchewan. Pull on my red ball sea boots, throw another log in the stove. I grab my heavy pea coat, down the road I go, and that wind just keeps on blowing, hoping for a better day. If I can't go out fishing, man, how am I ever gonna make it pay? in an office down by the bait shed. All the boys are there. Clouds of cigarette smoke just a hanging in the air. Old men telling stories, some of them telling lies. Heard 'em all before, guess I'll hear them one more time. Red sky in the morning, white caps on the bay, not a soul's going fishing. How the hell is a young man ever in this world gonna make it pay? There you have it. Red sky in the morning. Thank you so much. And so next, we have Jeff Stonehill from Seattle, Washington. Well, actually, Jeff is from Cordova, I understand, and fished many, many years. Fished the Copper River, Prince William Sound, gill netted on the Columbia and the Grays River, and ran fish buyers. And so thanks for coming, Jeff. Take it off.
Thanks, Jay. Yeah, I gill netted and salmon up in Copper River. Ran tenders up there for about 20 years. And there were some good years. Bought a new pickup truck, wintered in Hawaii, and some bad years. Well, this one's about the bad years. Bad year on the Copper. When the Copper is a flopper and the Sound forecast is down, seems as sorry gill netters gonna have to poke around for some sort of side gig. Something to do this fall. Pound some nails, work at Walmart, anything at all to wiggle through the winter. Try to make ends meet. Pay for that new gill net. And the kids have got to eat. This summer was a bummer. Fish and Feathers shut her down. Few times that we got to fish, there wasn't much around. One fish, two fish, red fish, blue fish seemed to be the theme. And when I checked that checkbook, it looked like a bad dream. Paid the fuel dock, dodged the boat loan, rode a tender home. No winter in Hawaii this year, can't afford to roam. All October I stayed sober, barely bought a beer. In November I got lucky, filled the freezer with a deer, but by Christmas dinner we'll be thinner. Unless I catch on with a crabber, some sketchy ride on a rust bucket boat, but you better know I'd grab her. No way to land a longline job without some quota share. My deckhand days didn't qualify. Damn deal don't seem fair. Those rainy walks pounding the docks were just a waste of time, and I'm not the kind of fella to take up a life of crime. So I guess the deal is a day job, some slavery on the beach. And CEO of a high-tech startup is probably out of reach. Had my fill of the plywood mill when I was just a kid, and there's no more work out in the woods the way my granddad did. There's a skinny payday at the Safeway, stocking cases of pop. Clean up on aisle 3 if you're handy with a mop. There's a lesson here if you'll bend an ear to what I'm trying to say. When the fish are running, don't be funning. Fish hard every day. Keep slapping it out. No quitting early is what I'm trying to preach. It's a bad year grinding on the grounds beats a day job on the beach. So that's a little advice to you young whippersnappers out there. Keep it wet. Special thanks to everybody, especially John and Jay and Amanda and the crew for making this virtual round haul happen. See you all next year in Astoria. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. That's great. Sure appreciate seeing you. Fred Bailey's up next. Lives aboard a sailboat. As far as I know, he's worked as a tractor salesman. Now that's an obscure profession. I've done a lot of things, but I've never sold tractors. Fred's from British Columbia, Ladysmith, BC, out on the island or off of the Vancouver Island. So thanks for coming, Fred. It's all yours.
Hey, Jay, want to buy a tractor?
Sure.
Okay, fine. Well, hopefully, first of all, I should say a huge thank you to all you wonderful people that have put this electric light show together. Thank you so much. It sure helps on this dark and rainy night. Hopefully next year we're all back in the groove, alive and in color in Astoria, and maybe we'll even still be able to recognize each other. I guess it's just tick-tock. We're working on a tiny clock here, and we'll get at her. I once worked as an engineer on fish packers that live hauled farm salmon out of the infamous Broughton Archipelago. Fish Ubering is not a piece of my life that I'm especially proud of, but it fed the wolf, and I learned a lot during my time around Fish Auschwitz. Now, I regard farm fish as domestic creatures. Comparing them to wild salmon is like putting a milk cow up against a white-tailed buck. Just can't be done. Those fish are sure as hell not wild nor native, and it's not unreasonable to see them as simple dumbass cattle. They had only known life in hatcheries and then as fattening protein cakes swimming round and round with thousands of others inside a farm pen. What could they know of the complex nature of inlets and passages and rivers and streams, islands and tides that are our coast for hundreds of miles? Isn't one molecule of seawater the same as the next? Well, apparently not. The entire point of this little story is what I tell you now. Just stupid farm fish, right? We'd have up to 80,000 pounds of live fish swimming in the belly of the packer as we headed for the fish plant. It'd take a while to get the boat away from the farm site out through one or another tortuous routes into Johnson Strait. Then running with the flood tide, we might have a bottom speed of over 10 knots. The strait is over a mile wide, and we'd run the side with the fastest current at the moment. But when we passed a stream mouth, even a small one on the far side, the fish would become frantic, and we'd have to adjust the oxygen for the change in their absorption rate. I still wonder about this all these years later. How could those pellet-eating morons know? Clearly, despite their state of utter confusion, they sensed something special which stirred primal instincts. Was it smell or taste, something magnetic, or perhaps electrical? It was occurring inside their tiny fish brains within a very noisy boat, hurtling through waters completely unknown to these creatures. How? How could they know? Jellyfish, which have no brains that we can find, manage to migrate and spawn in specific places at certain times. But then even humans have clearly proven you don't need much intellect to spawn. I can't offer rational explanations. I only manage to dredge up another question once in a while. But then maybe being occasionally awed by a fact of life is an achievement for us modern folk. Well, I dug out a little quick one out of the archives, and for some reason I like it. And on a dark, rainy night like tonight, when you're trying to remind yourself that spring's just around the corner, this is a little piece called Painting the Dory. There is promise in the gleam of wet paint on the inverted, curving hull of a small boat, lines merging perfectly at every angle, sensuous caress of gliding brush, lubricated in fragrant color, soothing every character of singing wooden grain, basking in the soft light of the boathouse, looking down on the squall-shrouded bay, lost horizon of open sea curving out beyond. Over gentle din of spring rain on rusted tin roof, lost on the workbench among paint pots, wood shavings and tools, crackles an old dust-covered radio, playing faraway strains of ancient fiddle tunes. Listening and working slowly with gnarled, knowing hands, again the old man feels the pull of the oars in his arms and back, tastes the wind-borne spray against his lined face, knows the drama of the dying silverfish around his feet, hears the creak of the straining locks, feels the tide carry him to harbor, is young again. That's it, folks. Remember to say a little prayer for the folks in the Ukraine tonight.
Yep, thank you, Fred. That's a nice thought. Let's not forget those folks. They're in dire straits right now. Next up, and from a long way away, the east coast of England, Beadnell, England, Katrina Porteous. We've had some nice visits in the run-up to this thing, trying to arrange some times that worked. We're 8 hours apart, so it's quite early in the morning there, actually. So welcome, Katrina.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for having me here. It's just great to be able to connect like this and to hear everybody. It's been a fab evening, so thank you all so much. I'm just going to read one poem. I'm from the northeast of England, as Jay says, but a few years ago, I got to spend some time long lining on a small boat off the Suffolk coast. So this is a poem, in fact, for two voices. Obviously, there's just one of me, so I'm going to have to improvise a bit tonight. One of the voices is a man, because women in England don't tend to fish. We have a few women fishermen, but not many in this country. I've been off on many boats, spent a lot of time among fishermen and among boats. I've never fished for a living, but it's always been my life to be around boats and fishing. So I'll finish up with this excerpt from Longshore Drift. We've always lived on the edge, boy. Small boats, lines and nets. We've always fished as the old men fished, and the old men showed the sea respect, for they'd wait for the fish in their season, shooting a dozen and two. I'll tell you, there's just one skipper out there, and that's not you. When a dozen and two was your limit, your 12 long lines might fetch 100 stone. Now 100 lines won't land you 10, and there's the catch. Technology's killed the fishing. Sea never gets no rest. Now politics gonna finish the job with the law like a millstone round our necks.
Kettle bottom,
And
Lord
little
Louis, sugar boat and ship wash, Napes Bank the onion, in and out the dingle.
If we was to land every fish we caught, they'd still be there another year.
Kettle bottom, Lord Louis, sugar boat and ship wash, Napes Bank the onion, in and out the dingle. Inner bank, Everwit, Magdapur the ridge, inner sweeper, outer sweeper, in and out the dingle.
Hand over fist over fist over hand, quick as a sprinter, haul the long line. Salt spray and the pre-hook spinning, jerk of the wrist and the big cod writhing. Stop, fast, haul, hard, fist over hand over fist, and it snoods, spray and the free hook spraying, flick of the wrist and the cod thumps down. My body's at ease on the water more than on the land. I'm at home on the sea. I was born for this life. I call myself a happy man, though I've slogged out my guts for nothing but heartache and little pain. And I wouldn't want to see my own boy battered as the sea has battered me many a day. For how can you call it a living? winter with no cod, and the boats getting fewer on the beach each year. I'm the last of the line. You can call me mad, but it's out on the boundless water, under the endless sky. I think of the people I meet on the land, and I know there's envy in their eyes, for how can you call it a living, bound to an office desk? When you see that sun come up, God knows it's a hard haul and little rest. When you're hauling for home, my darling, when you're giving it all you can. But if I was to die in my sleep tonight, I'd die a happy man. Thank you. Thank you. It's been a great night.
Well, thank you, and for coming all that way. We sure appreciate you making the effort, and we hope that someday we'll get over there to visit with you, and we'll see if that happens sometime, maybe. But in the meantime, stay well. We're worried about all you folks across on the other side there. And anyway, this is about time to wrap this up. We've had a nice evening, quite a lot of variety, and thanks to our audience, and again to all our sponsors. And we will say goodnight shortly. There will be one more event tomorrow. Cannon Beach Arts Association is sponsoring a last read, which will be a virtual one. I believe it's at 4 o'clock on Sunday. Somebody might correct me if I'm wrong, but anyway, thanks again for coming, and we'll be signing off from here for the 25th annual Fisher Poets Gathering. Thanks for coming.